Greetings, good evening, film fans, and good evening, fight fans all around. And or should I say bonjour, comment allez-vous, to all the French Canadians. And this is Aaron's webisode. This is number doesn't really matter, and this is another one of my film blogs and MMA blogs. All right, so this webisode that you'll be watching today is going to be directed specifically towards UFC number 161. What a weekend for Canada. You know, our neighbors to the north, taking place up there in Winnipeg, Canada. Bonjour to all you guys, and you know, this is going to be a great weekend for mixed martial arts altogether. So what I'm going to do in this blog, as usual, I'm going to be breaking down my analysis of UFC 161, Rashad Evans versus Dan Henderson is the main headline fight on this card. I'm going to break down my analysis of it, and you know, just give you some details on my predictions as far as what's going to happen today on my blog here. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you're having a great time and a great day and enjoying your life as always. So, you know, this is a great weekend for mixed martial arts altogether. There is a world WSOF number 3 taking place tonight, if you're not aware of that. So we have that going on tonight, the WSOF number 3 taking place in Las Vegas. That'll be on tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and 8 p.m. on the Pacific Time, like I said. So that'll be taking place tonight, which, you know, should be a great event as well. And then you have the UFC weigh-ins taking place at 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time today for UFC 161. And then you have the UFC 161 card tomorrow night taking place, which is it's going to be a great card. You know, it's stacked with some really good fighters on it. I'm really looking forward to this weekend, you know, as a mixed martial artist fan, and as someone that trains, you know, myself. So what I'm going to do is jump right into UFC 161. Before I do that, I do just want to give just a quick prediction for the WSOF, which will be taking place tonight. Just the main card. You know, I want to just go ahead and give my prediction for that. I am going to give the edge to John Fitch. You know, John Fitch was in the UFC. He's doing a lot of blogs. There's a lot of blogs going on. You know, I really like, you know, his style of fighting. He's pretty well-rounded. It's one of the few fighters that I've seen that's vegetarian, perhaps even vegan. I'm not sure. I'm sure someone watching this knows for sure. He does a lot of food blogs that are interesting. It's interesting to see how an athlete at that caliber, as a vegetarian, what things they're eating and drinking. So anyhow, for the main event, I'm going to give the edge to John Fitch, winning probably by decision. I do think it'll probably go the distance for WSOF 3. So I just wanted to slide that in before I jump into UFC 161, which is going to be taking place, like I said, in Winnipeg, Canada. You know, so Canada always has good crowds. You know, obviously they have a lot of fans. You got George St. Pierre, Rory McDonald, a lot of good fighters coming out of Canada. You know, I respect the crowd a lot. I respect the country a lot. If you've never been to Canada and you live in USA, you really need to go. It's a great time. You know, it's really open there. People are really friendly, you know, authentically and truly friendly, not just bullshitting around or putting on a fake appearance. So yeah, just as a side note, if you haven't been to Canada and you live in USA, take a trip. Go to Toronto, go to Montreal, try it out, if you can, Canada's great. It's a great country. Anyways, so I'm going to jump into UFC 161, my predictions here. And I'm not going to cover the entire card because, I'm going to be honest, some of the preliminary matches, I really don't have enough information or details about some of these fighters. I haven't really followed them or know, enough detail to give an accurate, prediction for the outcome. So I'm going to skip over some of those. I'm sure they'll be really good fights. A lot of times, like I said, the undercards, I've said previously in blogs, the undercards end up being some of the best fights anyhow, whereas the main events can be an absolute bore. So anyways, let's see, where do I want to start here? So let me go ahead and start with the, we got the Facebook preliminaries, and we have the FX preliminaries. And I'm going to start right around the FX preliminaries and then work my way up to the main card and just give you my predictions with that. Starting with Pearson taking on Robertson. I'm going to give the edge to Robertson by decision. Next we got Stute taking on Kraus. And for that matchup, I'm going to have to give the edge to Stute to take that, possibly by submission. Up next, we got, we got my boy Jake Shields taking on Woodley. Jake Shields I've always liked. I like that whole crew. They're kind of like hometown heroes. Shout out to California, as usual, the Bay Area. As we keep it rocking over there, a lot of good fighters coming out of there. Obviously, the obvious ones that come out of there. Jake Shields has always been like a hometown hero. I've always liked his style. I thought he put up a good fight against GSP in his title shot. I've always liked him. I liked him in Strikeforce. I still remember the incident where, they got in a fight on national TV with Jason Miller. It's good times. So yeah. With that said, I try not to pick these fights by who I'm necessarily a fan of. I'll talk about the love I have for them or how I respect them. But when it comes to these predictions, I'm giving you my hardcore true prediction as to who I perceive will win without any biased judgment, based on where the fighter's from and whatnot. So there's a difference between who I want to win and who I truly think will win, or who I would bet on, if I was betting, my house on a fighter or whatnot. So, all these predictions I'm giving are based on who I truly think will win the fight, not who I'm necessarily a fan of. So with that said, Jake Shields, Woodley, this is going to be a close one. I got to give the edge to Jake Shields, the wrestling background. He's pretty well-rounded. I'm going to go with Jake Shields by knockout or possibly submission. So I'm going to go with Jake Shields for that one. Next up after that, we got Pat Barry taking on Jordan. Pat Barry's another guy that, he's a humble dude. He's got a lot of, well-rounded techniques. He's got good stand-up. I watched a couple interviews with him, recently. He's been working on his stand-up like nothing, nothing ever before. He's really pushing his stand-up hard. With that said, I'm going to give the edge and the win to Pat Barry by knockout. I would love to see a Pat Barry knockout. His knockouts come hard, and they come over the top, and they're brutal. So, hopefully, and I'm going to predict Pat Barry wins with a knockout. Next, we got a female fight going on. We got Davis versus Sexton. Honestly, I really don't know a lot about, either one of these women. Um, I've kept up with a few of the women that fought in Strikeforce. Of course, Ronda Rousey, Liz Camouche, and a few others. And sometimes I watch Invicta. If you're not aware of what Invicta is, it's an all-female mixed martial arts fighting organization that only shows female fighters. It's only females that work for Invicta, as far as I know. And if this is incorrect, uh, let me know in the comment section. But yeah, so I really don't know which way on this one. So I'm gonna leave it open. Davis and Sexton, hopefully to be a good fight. I always enjoy seeing a female matchup, and I'm glad the UFC uh, brought the females in on the action. So with that said, we move on to the next bout. We have Jimmo versus Pakrojak. With that one, I'm going to give the edge to Pakrojak, possibly by decision for that matchup. Moving right along, we're going to be moving into the co-main event. The co-main event is featuring Miocic versus Roy Nelson. Roy Nelson's been on like a pretty good win streak, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure he's going to keep that up. He kind of talks a lot, so hopefully he can back it up. I like Miocic. I like his style, but I'm going to give the edge to Roy Nelson. Knockout. If he's going to do it, it's going to be a knockout, I would say. Otherwise, he'll probably lose by decision. So, Roy Nelson knockout. Alright, and the part I've been waiting for, which I can't wait to see, is the main event. Rashad Sugar, he goes by Sugar Evans, and Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson, another Cali native. As far as this fight goes, I'm definitely a bigger fan of Dan Henderson. I always have been. I like everything he brings to the table. Both these guys have been around for a while, so I'm sure most people are aware of what they both bring to the table. So, as far as the fan goes, I always root for Dan Henderson. I like him. We all know what he brings to the table. Rashad Evans, very, very, very good fighter as well. This is a really interesting matchup. And the reason I say that is because both of these guys are wrestlers. Let's just be real about it. They both come from a wrestling background. They're both really good wrestlers. And usually what happens, at least in my experience with watching fights, when you have two really good wrestlers going against each other, it usually doesn't end up on the ground. Neither guy wants to go to the ground. So what's interesting with these matchups is it usually becomes a stand-up fight, which me personally, I like stand-up. I prefer stand-up. I always want to see stand-up. That's what I do. That's what I train in. I like kickboxing. I like kung fu. I respect different martial arts. But I really am into stand-up more so than wrestling or jiu-jitsu. So I'm kind of biased when it comes to that. I want to see stand-up. So what's interesting about this, anyways, is that these are two really good, world-renowned wrestlers with wrestling background. They both paid their dues as far as wrestling goes. So it's probably going to be a stand-up war. And with that said, Rashad Evans is more technical, I think, and more athletic and faster. I believe he's younger. Well, I'm sure he's younger. I'm not sure how much. I'll find out tomorrow night. But yeah, so with that said, I mean, Rashad Evans being more technical, faster, and I wouldn't say better stand-up. Well, maybe so. Maybe I'll give him the edge with his stand-up. Maybe his stand-up is better. And I've been watching some interviews recently, uh, asking, really well-known fighters, their prediction of this fight. Most of them, you know, except for a few, I guess the majority that I've seen are giving the edge to Rashad Evans. So, after thinking about this fight, I have to agree with them. As much as I'm a fan of Dan Henderson and I like him and would like to see him win as a fan, as far as prediction goes, I'm giving it to Rashad Evans. Just for those reasons alone. He's faster, he's technical, and he's more well-versed and better stand-up. I think it will be a stand-up brawl. I'm hoping it'll be a stand-up brawl. And I'm thinking that someone will get knocked out. Okay? I don't see either one of them being submitted or ground and pound or the ref stopping it. Hopefully that doesn't happen with this matchup. I don't want to see any early stoppage with this. Hopefully it'll be a good stand-up match. Okay, so I'm going to give the edge to Rashad Evans. Rashad Evans wins UFC 161 main card. Now, with that said, we all know Dan Henderson has one thing that no one can dispute. He has one factor that is very, very devastating. It's his overhand right. If you haven't seen it, watch some Dan Henderson fights. He has an incredible overhand right. With that said, if by chance they are standing and Dan Henderson is able to pull off that overhand right, slip it in, somehow get it in, Rashad Evans is aware of it. Everyone's aware of it. Rashad Evans will be looking out for it, of course. Watch for him to be, standing in different switch stances probably, just to avoid that overhand right. But if by somehow Dan Henderson connects with that overhand right, he can win the fight. Other than that, I don't think he has a chance. I'm giving the W to Rashad Sugar Evans in Winnipeg, Canada, UFC 161. I hope you guys enjoy it. Shout out to everyone. Shout out to the film fans. Shout out to the MMA fans. Shout out to the West Coast. Shout out to everyone. Shout out to Canada and Europe as well. Alright, so UFC 161, like I said, tomorrow night, 10 p.m., 8 o'clock on the West Coast. WSOF tonight, 11 p.m., 8 p.m. on the West Coast. Check them both out. See what you think. Hopefully my predictions are correct. I've been doing decent so far, so we'll see how it goes. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your life. Till next time, this is Aaron's Film Webisodes. Have a good day, and arrivederci.